It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Ryan Schulte, who came here all the way from Yosemite, California, to talk about student loans. He is a student loan consultant that has been working with dentists all over the country since 2005. That's 13 years. He's married to his wife, Tracy, and together they have 5 boys. You beat me by 25%. I have 4 boys. Oh. So if you have 5 boys, you have to be Mormon or Catholic. I'm Catholic. What are you?
Neither. Just
neither.
No.
My gosh, is there a new religion I haven't heard about?
I do drink whiskey. Probably.
You do drink whiskey
from time to time.
So Ryan and his family live in the exact center of California, which is North Fork, California, near Yosemite, in a little town called North Fork. When Ryan isn't with his clients, he can be found spending time with his family, coaching baseball, or volunteering on a community development council where he works to redevelopment an old lumber mill into affordable housing and a biomass power plant. That is so damn cool. So I'm so glad you came on the show because, you know, finance is emotional. You know, people, when they make so many decisions in life, it's analytical. Should I do this or should I do that? But man, when it comes to money and love, it's all, the logic goes out the window.
That is very true.
Oh my God. So whenever you talk about money, and I think men are more emotional about it than women, because men, it's a big part of their identity. You know, that's why they have a Mercedes and not, you know, a Ford Explorer. That's why they have to get in a bigger house and they have to get letters behind their names and all that stuff like that. But where I want to start with you today, well, anyway, back to student loans. You know, I mean, I lectured at AT Still a couple Sundays ago where I went down there, and there was one kid in the class, the Mormon, who was going to graduate at $400,000 debt because he already got married and had a couple kids in school. Yeah. And he thinks that $400,000 is just like the end of the world, when I know that, you know, half my friends that are dentists, their divorce cost them over $1 million. Mine cost $3.8 million, and I graduated $87,000 student loan. So take $3.8 million divided by $87,000, and you get 41.
Right.
So they're all crying about their student loans, but there is some real issues about it in the news, because I always wondered if I declare bankruptcy, that student loans didn't clear, but now they're starting to revisit that.
Yeah, I think somebody, I forget who it was. It might have been the potential Fed, somebody that's looking at coming on one of the Federal Reserve boards that said, well, I don't see why we can't bankrupt student loans. Now, as of the moment, you cannot bankrupt them.
Because in insurance, it's always an actuarial risk analysis versus moral hazard, meaning the funniest thing in the world was when France decided that if you had lower back problems and couldn't work, you got 80% of your income. And within an hour, 10% of French men could no longer work due to background. So that's the moral hazard. You have fire insurance on your house. I've lived in Ahwatukee with 85,000 people for 30 years. I've only seen 3 houses burn down. But look at businesses that start to go bankrupt. No names mentioned in Wichita, Kansas, but there was an IGA grocery store when I was a little kid that the guy had 3 locations, and one of them burned down during a thunderstorm. Turned out later that one was losing so much money it was going to bankrupt his other 2, and then they actually did an investigation, found out indeed the owner had burned it down. So that's a moral hazard. So I imagine if you could walk out of school $400,000 of student loans and declare bankruptcy,
just wipe it off the map. Who wouldn't do that, right?
Who
wouldn't do that? I mean, everybody wants to pay their debt back, I think, to a certain extent. But if you could just wipe it away, it would be, everybody would. So
I can see the moral hazard argument. Because now what I'm doing is I'm advising if they're, because sometimes you meet them where they're over $500,000 in debt because they go on to become specialists like oral surgeons. Orthos. And then they marry another orthodontist. So then they get married and they're $1 million in debt. And that's when, I'm not a lawyer, but I did sleep in a Holiday Inn Express. That's when I recommend that they just move to like Sydney, Australia, Sweden, Hong Kong, and change your name to...
I have one couple that has $1.3 million in student loans.
If they move to Sydney, like my brother Paul just picked up and moved to Sydney, would they lose that $1.3 million?
I think it'd still be there. I'm not an international law expert, but
I mean, could they actually couldn't get it in Sydney?
Government would have to find a way to go after them. So,
but would they?
Probably not, would be my guess. But,
so you heard it first here on Dentistry Uncensored. You got $1 million student loans or that.
Move to Sydney.
Because when I go visit my brother Paul, it's the only country, I've lectured dentists in 50 countries. It's the only country where when you get on the plane to fly back, you're like, now why am I flying back in? Oh yeah, because I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids, that's the reason. But I get on that plane, I think, okay, well, if I didn't have 4 kids and 4 grandkids living in Arizona, I'd stay in Sydney.
Totally.
And the reason is you don't need a car. If I walked out my front door, which you just walked in and went and laid down in the middle of the street, probably no one would know it for 3 days. You walk out my brother's front door and there's bars and restaurants and this and that. And if he wants to go anywhere, he just jumps on a subway.
Yeah.
I mean, the life in Sydney is so much cooler than Phoenix, Arizona. But anyway, so we're just kidding. We're not recommending. You go to Sydney, Australia.
Right.
If I had 1.3 million and no family in Arizona, so what's a kid? What are his options?
Okay, so it depends. There's really 2 sets of student loans, right? You've got the ones that come from the government, and then you've got the private ones.
Okay, now go slow because that big assumption. I mean, you're talking to a lot of people; they might not know that. So there's 2 types of student loans: government, or private,
or private.
Is that what you called them? Private.
Private loans, yeah, from a private lender. The government loans would be, for the most part, the ones that they're getting while they're in dental school are usually all government loans, direct loans, grad plus loans.
And what are these loans called or known as?
Grad plus loans are kind of the main ones from dental school.
Now, when
Stafford
I was in
loans.
school, they had HEAL loans.
Yeah, they used to have FFEL loans. They kind of redid it all around 2010.
Oh, okay.
And so for the most part, they're Stafford loans and Grad Plus loans. And actually...
Stafford loans?
Stafford loans, yeah.
And is a Stafford loan a government loan?
It is. It is a direct loan.
From the government?
Yep.
So they have Stafford loans and Grad Plus loans.
That's right.
Those are the government programs. And then who's doing the private?
Well, there's a bunch of them. SoFi, you've probably heard of SoFi, DRB, LendKey. There's a bunch of different banks that will refinance. Usually they're refinancing the government loans. And the reason for that is that the government loans tend to have a higher interest rate.
Why? You'd think it'd be the opposite.
There's a variety. Yeah, you would think that. And there's a lot of, I think that a lot of the student political associations are trying to push for that. I think the default rate is pretty high on student loans right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, what is? Do you have any numbers on the default rate?
I don't. Not off the top of my head, but I do. I just read recently that they're pretty high.
Ryan, can you find any Googling on student loan default rates?
And that's part of, actually, Trump just came out saying he was going to start enforcing the laws. Because one of the things that happened is that, yeah.
Does that mean anything?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy said
totally.
More.
There's a lot of directions we could go, but I think the point that he was making is, and I think it illustrates the point that they really have, because as your dentist, as a dentist, if you default on your student loans, they can take your dental license.
Are you serious?
Yeah, which makes perfect sense, right?
Okay, Ryan has sent us a telegram. The U.S. Department of Education today released the 3-year federal student loan cohort default rate. The rate increased slightly from 11.3% to 11.5% for students who entered repayment. I've had 3 of the biggest lenders to buy a dental office on the show, and the default rate is about 0.4%. And the only people who default usually have their license taken away for moral hazard, drugs, cocaine.
Yeah.
So it's not even 1%. It's not even 0.5%. It's 0.4%. I had no idea that 11.5% of student loans default. That is a high default rate.
I think that might be one of the reasons. I'm not exactly sure how they quantify some of this, but there's really no reason to default on a government student loan because of all of the government programs that are available for financially distressed borrowers. So, those are things like income-based repayment, which those programs have ballooned, particularly for dentists. In the last 10 years, I think it's really, there's a lot more information out there now than there was.
And it's starting to hurt. Ryan, what's total student loan debt right now in the United States? And then give me the total student loan debt.
I want to say it's $1.5 trillion.
$1.5 trillion.
But that's a total guess. I could be wrong.
No, that's about right. And I also believe total credit card debt is less than student loan debt. I think student loans 1.5 trillion. I think credit cards is 1 trillion. And then also give me, Ryan, total mortgage. In 2014, there was approximately 1.3 trillion.
1.3. There you go.
1.3. You're off by 0.2, man. Oh,
it happens.
You must have drank a beer at the baseball game. You're down here. You're a big baseball fan. You like the Angels.
I do like the
Los
Angels.
Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
That's right.
And their spring training is out here.
It is.
Isn't there a lot of spring trainings out here?
Yeah, most of the teams west of the Rockies
are here.
Yeah.
And then east of the Mississippi.
It's down in Florida.
Yeah. Okay, so so 44 million students have borrowed 1.3 trillion. Who had an average outstanding loan balance of, I don't want to tell Dennis this, the average is only 37,000.
I know, that hurts so bad. It's always fun to say that when I'm speaking at dental school.
That's what you borrowed senior year.
Yeah.
And then by average household carrying this type of debt, the average U.S. household is $16,000 in credit card debt. The average mortgage is $172,000. Average auto loan is $28,000. But total debt owned by U.S. consumers on credit cards is now under $1 trillion. It's only $750 billion. Outstanding mortgages on their house is $8 trillion. Auto loans is $1 trillion. And student loans is $1.3 trillion. It's actually $1.28 trillion. But thank you, Ryan, for all those numbers. Total consumer debt of all things is $12.35 trillion. And your stupid, insane government is $19 trillion in debt. And when your economy is doing good, that's when you pay down debt. And when your economy is doing horrible and the consumers aren't buying, that's when you want to have the government start. So in the Depression, the government was building Hoover dams and all these projects trying to get you employed so you get a paycheck so you could go to the butcher and the baker and the candlestick maker. And right now, after a 9-year expansion, what does our government decide to do?
Deficit spending.
Give a tax credit and go another $1.5 trillion in debt, which is, every year I get older, I see less faith in democracy. And then I go where they're not allowed to vote, like Singapore. China's gotten more people out of poverty to the middle class in the last 30 years than any country that ever has in the history of the world. And Singapore is the most well-managed society. And then as every year I get older in the United States, it's like, my God, I'm almost losing faith in democracy. Huh. I mean, it's just like, there's no level of stupidity they can't stoop to. I mean, imagine a system where, if someone said this, let's have a system where the dumbest guy in the room has the same vote as you. Democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. No, you're not supposed to talk about politics. So the consumer's $12 trillion in debt. Your insane government's $19 trillion in debt. The student loans are $1.3 trillion in debt. Credit card is $0.75 trillion in debt. What is the deal? Well, you're just doing dentists for 13 years.
Yeah.
So educate me. What are you doing? What needs are they not meeting? What do they need?
So I started my career in 2005, right before the financial crisis. That was an awesome time to get into financial planning.
Great timing. What was your next best idea?
Right, exactly. so I guess I like getting hit in the face with the 2x4, so I stuck it out. And I was working at the time with people that were mostly dentists that were buying practices. I was kind of helping that transition, just doing some of the insurance for them and then some of the employee benefits and that stuff on their practices. And I started realizing and noticing that there was a lack of education on financial matters in general for a lot of these dentist buying practices.
It's all med schools,
right.
Law schools. The funniest thing about when I came out my 30-day MBA came from a letter from a priest. And you know what he said to me? He goes, I went to the seminary for 8 years. All we did is read the Bible for 8 years. I graduate, they send me to this small town, and it's a church, and it has an elementary school, which is like $1 million in debt. The teachers hadn't had a raises, all these complaints.
Right.
And guess who's in charge of the whole damn thing? And the priest says I didn't know the difference between a statement of cash flow, a balance sheet. I had no financial training. I've never done an HR evaluation. I've never dealt with upset customers.
Yeah.
And he keeps calling back at seminary saying, could we have covered some of this?
Right. Yep.
And then I graduated from dental school, and I start my office. I graduated May 11, 87, got it open September 21, 87, and Friday, my staff, for some reason, wanted paid.
Details.
And it's like, and then I'm like, could they have showed us how to do payroll? And that was when it was all paper on pegboard. They didn't show us the pegboard. I asked this lady, she says, well, on your pegboard. I'm like, what is a pegboard? She goes, your accounting. And she goes, you don't know what a pegboard is? You own a dental office, you don't know what a pegboard is, and you don't know how to do payroll? Oh my gosh. So they have no financial.
No, generally and I started,
You know what percent of dentists graduate from dental school and they can't even rectify their bank statement? What would you guess?
Yeah, pretty high percent.
It's actually 112%.
Yeah. From a dentist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I noticed. And I think the challenge for owning a dental practice too is that it's unique in that you kind of have to fulfill three functions of a business. You got to do the marketing, you have to be the technician, and then you have to be the manager as well. So, most businesses have different departments for those three things. But you're fixing the teeth, you're trying to get the patient in the chair, and then you're also having to manage staff, and hopefully, the manager is kind of the first role that you'll hire somebody for. But, if you're just new and starting out, nobody necessarily describes that those things all need to take place in a business. And so I just noticed that maybe I should start getting involved in some educational pieces. And then at the same time as this was going on, they opened up a dental school in Pomona, Western University Health Sciences School of Dental Medicine.
That's the newest dental school.
I think so.
Pomona, the sixth one. So you have, what, USC,
UCLA, Loma Linda's there.
Loma Linda, that's the southern part. Then up north in San Fran, you got
UOP,
University of
UCSF.
Pacific, and UCSF. And now Pomona. And where's Pomona? In Pomona, I assume?
Yeah, it's
a city called Pomona.
Inland, Riverside.
Riverside.
Yeah, it's kind of...
that's kind of by Loma Linda.
Loma Linda, it's not far. They're not far apart at all.
Okay, so Loma Linda's in Riverside. Is Pomona the name of an actual city?
Yeah.
So it's in Pomona?
Yeah.
And Pomona's next to Riverside?
Pretty close. There might be a city or two in between. And I think it's about maybe 25
Do they have
apart.
a graduating class yet?
Yeah, they graduated their first class in, I think, 2012 or 2013.
Okay. It's the only dental school I haven't been to down there, so...
They're great. I actually teach in the practice management
Is it private or
now.
government?
It is a private one.
I want to podcast the dean.
What? Say that?
I want to podcast the dean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dean Fredrickson. He's really nice.
We'll tell him. We'll tell him.
Steve Fredrickson.
Yeah. So
I'll be there in May, so I'm happy to check in.
California is 10% of the U.S. population. It's the same population as Canada. And they have 6 dental schools. Okay, so anyway, continue about.
Yeah, so they opened. I had some friends that were in the first class, and then I just started doing some educational stuff. I started getting involved with the American Student Dental Association, and then I actually now I write for their blog, so you can see my stuff.
Yeah, what's their blog called? It's
Mouthing Off.
Mouthing Off. I love their blog.
Yeah, they're great over there.
Mouthing Off.
So I write for them a few times a year, 5 or 6 times a year. And
well, when you write for them, Dentaltown has a blog section. So if you've already done the work, you should post it on Dentaltown.
Absolutely.
You're just getting more use out of your. But if you ever do a blog, email me the link howard@dentaltown.com, and I'll push it out on my social media because I got Facebook.com @HowardFran. I got 300,000 dentists. Twitter, I got @HowardFran, I got 25,000. LinkedIn, 36,000. Instagram, 14,000. Google Plus, 5,000, and Pinterest, 15,000. So and when you write the blog, you can share it to your own social media on Dentaltown.
Cool.
So the pin's there. But if you email me the link, I'll open the link and I'll push out mine, so I can push it out to.
Sounds great.
Do that work and push it out to 500,000 people.
I'd appreciate it. And
and if you ever do a blog on Dentaltown and want me to push it out to 500,000 people on my personal stuff, just email me Howard@dentaltown.com.
Okay.
But those mouthing off deals are good because the reason they're good is students You know, when we were little, it's called talking back to your parents or talking back to you weren't supposed to do it. But I love their fresh, their energy, their perspective. I'm a grandpa with 4 grandkids.
Yep.
I love hearing the...
Yeah, I love...
It's not even, for me, it's not even the next generation. It's already the next generation.
Right. And I like working with them. And I think the thing you find is the students, you know, I think part of the problem with the student loan thing is that, you know, there's, I don't know how many applicants for, I think Western University has maybe 80 seats per class, and there's probably, what, 1,000 applicants for those seats, I would guess. So if you're one of the, you know, the 1,000...
Can you find how many total applicants for dental school versus acceptance? Because a lot of those are applying to multiple
schools. That's true. Yeah, I do know that. I feel like at one point there were 3,000 applicants, but I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
But I can quote one thing: price elasticity. Price has a very elastic effect on demand. You sell more Chevys than you do Cadillacs. The greatest car in America, I assume, is a Lamborghini, but it's 300,000, so they only sell about 100. And a lot of dentists are always saying, well, why do the dental schools keep raising their tuition? Well, think about it. They raise their price $10,000 a year, and they don't have a decrease in applicants. And when the dental schools started figuring that out 10 years ago, they go, God, we could raise $10,000, build a new school. So that's why...
And that's exactly where I was going with that.
A dozen schools are now at $100,000 a year, and they still fill all their seats with qualified applicants.
And have a waiting list, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's part of the problem. And you know, here's your kind of... This goes back to your comments on government, and I don't know what the solution is to this, but there is an unlimited supply of money if you're borrowing dental school. So...
There's no cap.
There's no cap. So the student goes, I got into dental school. They're not looking around thinking, how much is this going to cost me? For the most part, they're going to dental school. If they got accepted, I have never heard of anybody getting accepted and saying, oh, no, this costs too much. I'm not going. And the financial aid department is really good about getting them the money they need to pay tuition. They don't... Because
they work for they're
school.
Getting paid by the student's debt.
And again, the student really wants to go to dental school. It is an amazing way to move up. I mean, it's a very cool
Especially
experience.
if your dad's a dentist.
Right.
And he's paying for your dental school.
Or you've got mom and dad that have breathing down your neck, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a doctor, you know, and then they get through dental school and there they are. And so now the deficiency comes into play is paying that back. You know, these guys do nothing, their payment will be... So I probably have a disproportionate amount of higher debt just because of the line of work that I'm in. So these students get in, they get accepted, no one's telling them how to pay the money back. And, you know, each year that goes by, they're racking up more and more debt. And there's a lot of students that are legitimately taking anxiety medication while they're in dental school for a variety of reasons, I think. I mean, dental school's tough, but I've met some people very stressed out about their debt. Well,
the dental school also, I know I'm repeating myself in my show, but it also has a very adverse selection process, so it's not a normal person. The best example of that was bipolar in the United States. Do you ever hear about that big dilemma there? When it used to be called manic depressant.
Right.
And the American psychiatrists, clear back in the 50s, said consistently that America was 4%. And the Europeans said they were 0.5%. So everybody just assumed everybody was measuring it differently because Europeans, how could it be different? And then in the 60s and the 70s, they started talking about this law. So finally in the 80s, some guy said, look, let's get this right. Went over there, he's the head psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins. He wrote a book on this. He said, damn, they're only 0.5%. We're 4%. That's 8 times as many.
Huh.
So everybody thought about it. Well, then they realized, for 500 years, who was the most likely person to say, screw this country, get in a boat and row 6 weeks over when 1 in 8 boats sunk and show up on the beach with nothing but the shirt on your back? That was a person in a manic phase.
Right.
And sure enough, through natural selection, we had 4%. And then this guy went even further and started asking all of his cohorts, do you see anybody in the Fortune 500 CEOs? And they started, they put together that. Sure enough, who is crazy enough to start a new business?
Right.
Or go to dental school? So they figured out that by income, by the time you got to, 4% for the poor, middle class. By the time it was like 10 million, it was like 25%. By the time you were the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, it was like a third. So
that's really fascinating.
And he wrote a book, and it's called How a Little Bit of Craziness Leads to a Lot of Success. Normal people are risk adverse.
Right.
Normal people don't post on message boards and Facebook and Twitter. Only 1% do 80% of the posting in social media. They're called super users. Normal people don't take risks. Normal people don't want to draw attention to themselves. Normal people don't want to post a root canal because what if you come on and say, God, that root canal sucks.
Yeah.
A normal person
Right.
would like cry and run off into the backyard and bury themselves and delete their x-ray. It takes a different person to say, thanks for the feedback. Why does it suck? Oh, you missed a canal, you're short. You know, very, very ill. So in dental school, in college, join a frat, have a girlfriend, put back some beers, join a bowling league. You'd never get accepted into med school, dental school, law school. Who's the freak that got A's in geometry, calculus, and physics?
Right.
So now this guy is a dentist, a physician, and a lawyer. And they're not normal people. And there's nothing about a lawyer or a physician or a dentist that's representative of the middle class. Population. You can't say doctor and then median, mode, or mean in the same sentence.
Right.
They're freaks.
Right.
And I love them because I'm a freak.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather do a root canal.
Maybe that's why I get it fit in well.
I'd rather pull 4 wisdom teeth and go golfing at, what is it, Pebble Beach or whatever it's on. But, but anyway, so why do you fit in more? Are you a freak too?
I think so. Yeah, that's what my
well, 5
a little
kids.
Crazy myself.
There's nothing normal about having 5
who does
kids.
That? Yeah.
Yeah, if you were normal, you'd have 1.9 children.
Right. Yeah.
And
and filling my calendar up with a bunch of community service stuff. So
yeah, you have 5 kids, and you're trying to turn a land mill or a old lumber mill into affordable housing and a biomass power plant. Yeah, you're probably manic.
Yeah, probably. I think.
But what? So what are my manic homies? Why are my manic homies calling you?
You know, there's a lot of stress and anxiety about the student debt. I mean, there are literally students in paralysis, and if they graduate dental school and they don't do anything, they just, what the standard repayment is 10 years. So you pay your debt off in 10 years.
Standard on the government and the private.
Well, private, you probably wouldn't have a private loan unless you decided to refinance, and then you could pick whatever term you wanted.
But the standard government loan is a 10-year, 120-month payment.
That's right.
Okay.
Which is roughly $5,000 for a dentist with $450,000 in student loans.
So the people only calling you probably aren't the one whose parents both worked and graduated 100, 150.
Yeah.
The ones that are calling you probably on their own. So what do you think the average dental student graduate student loan is? Like what percent?
Well, I can tell you what it is. I think the average dental student has $270,000 in.
But the thing I hate about average,
it's not a good measure because you have a lot of students who have zero debt.
Zero.
Now, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a percentage that have zero.
And their dad was a dentist.
Right, exactly.
Or an orthodontist. Or an oral surgeon.
Gastroenterologist.
So what percent of the kids do you think are in that boat?
I don't know. 2 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 10, something like that.
So 10 to 20%?
Yeah, that might be high. I don't know.
And you call them the Lucky Sperm Club?
Yeah, you know what's funny is this particular group usually lies about having student loans, so they tend to pretend that they do.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. You know who you are.
But they shouldn't lie about it because they should motivate their kids, their classmates, that, you survive this and your children won't have to.
That's right. That's right.
You do this.
Yeah, and so basically,
when I was a little kid in Wichita, Kansas, both grandparents, grandma and grandpa, lived in Parsons, Kansas, 3 hours away. And when we would go and visit them, they both still had outhouses. And to this day, my brain wants to call it indoor plumbing. Because my parents used to say, well, yeah, that was great. Your dad moved to Wichita and got a good job so he could have indoor plumbing. And people don't realize that, that you have 7.5 billion people on Earth and 3 billion still don't have indoor plumbing. And in China, which has 1,300,000,000, and we have 330 million, they have more people than Americans do that don't have indoor plumbing, electricity, and sewage in their house. So you always think of China as the Apple plant in Shanghai and Beijing and Tokyo. Drive inland.
Yeah.
They have 350 million people that don't have the three basics: indoor plumbing, toilets, sewage, running water, electricity.
Right.
But anyway, so...
yeah, so, you know, you look at these grads, they step into the situation of having a $4,500, $5,000 a month student loan payment. I tend to see new grads making between 120 and 140. There's...
So you made 120, 60,000 of it needs to go to student loans.
It's just not feasible. I mean, it's like...
well, it is feasible.
It's feasible...
Why can't you live off the other 60?
Well, remember taxes, so Uncle Sam takes their cut.
So you get so you gross 120.
You're going to give up, depending on where you live, maybe 30, 35% between income, payroll. Might even be a little
so
bit
what
more,
would 120 be
40%.
after taxes?
Multiply times 70%. Let's just say it's 30, because remember they pay payroll tax on it too. So
there you do it. So if they gross 120, what's their after tax?
Let's call it 84.
80. We'll make it 85.
85,
Easy math.
yeah.
85, and then they're going to have 60 to student loans. Well, they still got 25,000 left. Or what? They lose their recipe to ramen noodles?
Yeah,
And what they want to cook out of something other than a holly hot pot?
Who needs a car? So, you know, and that's for 120,000 based on 500 a day, which is kind of what a lot of the corporates, the daily minimum. Now, obviously, that's
120,000. So
that's it. I don't see people making less than that generally.
So the average person works 5 days a week.
If they're working 5 days, yeah.
So 120,000 divided by 2,000 days a year, which would be... I was doing hours. I was doing 40 hours a week. Yeah. So it'd be divided by 200. So that's 600 a day.
Yeah, that's 600. So I usually assume a couple weeks off. Yeah.
600 a day. And by the way, they need to all start paying... you know, a lot of people pay percentage, and I'm telling you, the big guys aren't doing this mistake, but the little guys are doing all day. They say, well, I just pay my associate 25% of production, or 30% of production, or 33% of production. But you don't have a base there, and you say, well, I don't need a base because I have a successful office. Yeah, but the media is going to start invading you saying, well, this doctor had to diagnose 4 cavities, and he went to another dentist, he had no cavities, and Dr. Bad only pays him on production, and if he doesn't do anything, he can't feed his family. So you need to have a base pay, because the media is never going to like...
And you know, throw that on top of somebody who has $450,000 in student loans, has never had a job before, and now they're on production trying to figure out how to diagnose without their professor looking over their shoulder, and they're on their own. Everybody's calling them doctor. It's a pretty stressful situation to walk into.
And one last example of that, the media is already going after some of these big air conditioning and heating companies, and that just pay straight on commission for when they install a new unit. Now, everybody's making a good wage because they're so busy, they sell enough heaters and air conditioners, it's all good. But when they have an undercover camera and some guy comes out and says this needs replaced and it couldn't be fixed, and he genuinely believed that, but then the media shows that, well, he did it because it was a commission, and if he didn't do that, he wouldn't make money. So you got to have a commission versus base pay. Or
base pay versus commission.
Base pay and commission.
And commission, right.
But you can't get rid of the base pay because nobody's going to trust your diagnosis and treatment plan on your air conditioner, your auto repair, or your 2 cavities, because you're selling the invisible. I know what an iPhone is. I know what bottled water is. I don't know if my air conditioner needs a shot of Farran or not.
Right.
I don't know if I have 4 cavities. You're selling the invisible, so the incentive's got to be clean.
And I'm not a dentist, so this is coming from my clients, but you know, there's some dental cases that are gray, right? Like one dentist might do one thing, another dentist might recommend another thing. You know, it's not always necessary. No,
we have research on it. Let's be frank about this. I mean, I love my homies, but here's the real. So Reader's Digest 30 years ago sent out a journalist. Now, this is at a time when my parents and grandparents all had Reader's Digest on the deal. It's very solid journalism. It wasn't fake news or gray journalism. We got a FMX study models, went to 30 different dentists and got 30 different treatment plans.
Right.
So when the government saw that, they thought, well, it is Reader's Digest. That's not a tabloid. That's not, you know, that's serious journalism. So the government said, well, we're going to do it. We're going to do 100. Guess how many different treatment plans the government got? 99, because 2 dentists said you needed nothing. And on both studies, it went from $0 to $30,000.
Oh my gosh.
And you can see it on Dental Town all day long. Like some lady will have a chip and someone will say, well, I'd just buff it out.
Right.
Next guy, well, I'd put a little composite there. Next guy,
Yeah.
I'd do 8 veneers.
Right.
Next guy, I'd do Invisalign, bleaching. Yeah, I mean, it's like, dude, I mean, that's dentistry is more art than science.
Right. That's what I've gathered being from the outside looking in.
Absolutely.
That is my
And then
impression.
if a dentist gets caught up in, say, sleep apnea, he'll stop paying attention to all the other deals and just go into sleep medicine or implants or cosmetics.
Yeah.
So if you go to a TMJ dentist, guess what percent of their patients have TMJ?
100%.
All of them. Are you stressed?
Yeah.
Are you stressed?
Yeah.
Do you ever wake up and fart or grind your teeth or, look at this, So they go into TMJ, my God, it's all TMJ. If they go into perio, it's all, you talk to a periodontist, they'll say like 112% of all Americans have gum disease. Really? 80% have it? Really? 4 out of 5 have gum disease? I mean, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
I'm interrupting you way too many times.
No, that's okay. We're having fun. So anyway, just all adding to the financial stress. So there are government programs that allows the students to make a payment based on their income rather than it actually it's a little weird, but their payment is completely disconnected from how much debt they owe. So someone that owes $1 trillion or someone that owes 400,000 will have the same payment because it's based on their discretionary income, which is a function of AGI.
But what is AGI?
Adjusted gross income. So there's a couple of so let's say they're making 120,000 a year. They might have a couple of adjustments. If they put money into a retirement plan, it'll bring down their AGI, and then
A retirement plan,
IRA.
IRA.
HSA account is another example of some that reduce AGI.
What's HSA?
The health savings account.
Health savings account, IRA.
Yeah.
And is the IRA also the 401k?
Yeah, 401k I think would affect that as well.
Okay, but what I don't understand is, what if my minimum interest only payment is $1 a month and the adjusted gross income payment is only 80%? Does my balance get bigger and bigger? It does.
It grows.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it negatively amortizes.
Negatively amortized.
Yeah, negatively amortized.
Those are two words you'd never want to see in the same sentence.
Yeah, generally speaking, with financial planning, that's a word we don't want in the plan, if possible.
Wow, negative amortization. That sucks.
They used to have mortgages that did that. I don't know if you remember before the financial crisis, shocker, that you could actually pick what you wanted to pay. You could do a 15-year mortgage, a 30-year. You could do an interest-only payment, or you could not even pay all the interest. They had those old pick-a-pay mortgages is what they called them. Shocker that imploded.
And what was that movie that analyzed that so well?
Oh, I didn't see the movie, but I read the book, The Big Short. I read the book. It was amazing.
That was, as an MBA from Arizona State University, I knew that Hollywood was going to screw that movie up. I knew it would just be like a love story, and they butchered the economics. By God, they got an A in the deal.
Oh, and I didn't actually. I didn't see that.
My instructors from ASU said, "I cannot believe Hollywood," and it was weird creativity. Like they were at a casino. And then they were making a bet, and then people in the back, famous people. I mean, it was a great lesson in economics.
And the book was amazing. I think I actually did it on audiobook. That's one of those books that I would sit in my car and be late for meetings so that I could finish the chapter before I would go in there. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
So going back to student loans, there's a variety of different government plans that allow them to make a payment based on 10 or 15% of their discretionary income. So the government takes their AGI from their tax return or a pay stub, and then they subtract out a poverty level factor. So someone that is making $120,000, their payment might be $800 or $900 a month on their student loans, regardless of whether they have $500,000 or $250,000. And then at the end, if they stay in this program the whole time, fulfill the requirements of the plan, once they get to the end of either 20 or 25 years, and assuming their loans qualify, that debt gets forgiven on a taxable basis, taxable income in that year, but it gets forgiven.
God, I hate to have that over my head for 20, 25 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know,
because I was thinking with a kid, like let's say your student loans are $400,000. Well, shouldn't there eventually be a year where you make $400,000 in that year?
Right.
I mean, that's and then when they don't do that, it's a whole lot of other reasons. I mean, if you were, I always say this to a kid: you should at least have a plan that whatever your student loan debt is, that one day you make that in a year.
Right.
But what is your business?
And how
do you make a living to feed 5 boys? Who I'm sure barely eat a thing at all.
Right, yeah. It is amazing what they can put down.
We'd have dinner at 6.
So I charge a flat fee. So I have my financial planning career, which we'll do another podcast on one of these days. But so I do retirement planning, I manage assets, I do insurance and all that fun stuff. My student loan planning business is separate. I charge a flat fee. That's not really a huge moneymaker for me. That was more something that I did because it was demand. It was demand based. I had so many people that were like, hey, I just want to talk to you about my student loan.
So your website is studentloananalysis.com?
Studentloananalysis.com.
Okay.
Numbers are on there. And what I do is I have a software program. I can actually import their loans. We'll do an analysis on the debt. We got to make a lot of guesses about the future, right? How much you're going to be making for the next 20 years, which is tough. And then we can kind of see when it makes sense to start aggressively paying off debt, if ever. For the specialists, most of the specialists will all pay their debt off. There's a subset of general dentists that, you know, if they don't ever make more than $200,000 or $150,000 a year, it may make the most mathematical sense to run these repayment plans. And
so they only know themselves. They're driving to work alone. They're on the Stairmaster loan. Give us a breakdown of who's calling you. What percenters? You said the average person is 450,000.
Yeah.
Your average client is 450,000.
In student debt, correct.
So the $495 you should charge $450. So it's just, you could tell them it's $1 for every $10,000 they're in debt. So you have to pay them $1 for every $1,000 that you borrowed. $450,000 student loans. What percent are specialists?
Probably 10 or 15%, and those are usually people in residency. They're calling me, hey, I'm in residency. What's the best way to deal with this while I'm in residency?
And you're saying the specialists have a very low default rate?
Yeah, well, specialists just generally make a good chunk more. Yeah,
twice
at least.
as much.
Yeah, exactly.
The average general dentist is 174, oral surgeon 410.
Right.
Endodontist 385.
Yeah.
Pedodontists like 390 until they drink themselves under the table from deciding to be. But anyway, so your average client is 450. You said some other things about your pool. You said there's a subset.
Well, I was going to say there's a subset of general dentists, because remember, not everybody graduates dental school and wants to work 5 days a week for the rest of their career. So there's you know, I do talk to dentists that don't want to work on patients, which is particularly unfortunate if you borrowed $450,000 to do that. But
what percent is this subset?
I would say I probably talk to a few of those a year. I don't know, 1 or 2%. I could say on a specific.
That's probably
percentage.
an anxiety thing to graduate from dentistry.
Yeah, it could be. I think some people like the research more. You know, they want to do educational type things, which doesn't always pay as well as perhaps owning your own practice might. And so there are some people that it does make mathematical sense to stay on these repayment plans, pay as little as possible, and save up for the tax bill down the road. And I kind of help navigate and help people with a decision tree on how to decide whether that's them.
Now, you give out your email on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ryan at studentloananalysis.com versus Ryan at dentaltown.com.
Not to be confused.
Not to be confused. Two different Ryans in the room.
That's right.
Ryan at studentloananalysis.com.
That's
Ryan at dentaltown.com. And who are you talking to right now? Who should be calling you? It sounds like
it's more people.
You don't know. You're saying 10 to 20% don't have any student loans because their dad is a dentist.
And I'm happy to work with them on my financial planning side. But for the student loan piece, anybody that's graduated in the last 5 years that has 350 plus student loans, they're probably in a situation that's making less than $250,000 a year. And then there's another option that we actually haven't even talked about, which is public service loan forgiveness. That's a whole nother area. If someone's looking at doing community clinic, Indian reservation,
well, you can't go on Indian reservation because they're all dry. You can't buy booze on Indian reservation. The hell are you gonna do? You get loan forgiveness and can't drink? And okay, so the people who should be calling you, this is 2018.
Yeah.
So you're saying if they graduated in the last 5 years, what is 2018 minus 5? That's 2013.
Yeah.
So if they graduated past 20.
Yeah, they can still call me. Yeah, they can reach out. If you're
over $350,000 student loans.
If you're stressed out about your student loans and you don't feel like you've got a good plan and you don't understand the various options available to you with repayment, give me a call.
But you say that, but you give out your email. You didn't give out a phone number. So now your
phone number's on the website.
Are you going to give it out over the podcast?
Yeah, sure.
What is it?
949-336-2593.
I could have sworn I saw that number on the Circle K bathroom wall. The hell was it doing?
I hope not.
The hell said for a good student loan time analysis. Awkward. So if they're over $350,000 student loans, or they're having stress or anxiety about their student loans.
Yeah, or they're only working 1 or 2 days a week. You know, I have had clients that have wanted to be a stay-at-home mom or dad, and so they're only working 1 or 2 days a week with $450,000 in student loans. Well, you know, you need to do some unique planning if that's you. And these government.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's really weird because I came from a different generation. I mean, our generation, like when I opened up my dental office, I had $87,000 student loans. So guess what my hours were for like the first year?
Yeah.
Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7.
Right.
You know what? You know where the name 7-Eleven comes from?
I guess I don't.
When they opened up 7-Eleven, all the old small town grocers had bankers hours, so they were open 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. In fact, now it's a branding issue because now they're all 24 hours a day. And what I used to, and then the dentist will tell me, well, this area is crowded. Well, when I opened up in my corner, it was crowded. It was crowded Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. But Friday, there was only 4 of us open. Saturday, it was only me and the other Catholic dentist who had 4 kids in 2 days.
I was going to say something about lots of kids.
It was amazing because Friday, I was excited to go on Friday because I just lost 75% of all the dentists. So you get more emergencies, broken tooth, $1,000 crown, toothache, $2,000 root canal crown. Saturday, it was like shooting fish in a barrel.
Right.
And then what is the urban method? Oh, well, no one will come in on Saturday. They'll all cancel their appointments because they're all going to go fishing at the lake or go to the mall. It's like, okay, dude, well, this is what I want you to do. Go to the mall on Tuesday at 9 o'clock and then go on Saturday. And then tell me which one is more busy. So a lot of people just say things they want to believe based on no facts. So if I had $350,000 student loans, I would just work my ass off for I've got lots of people that do that. And so then we'll talk about, you know, private refinancing. When does it make sense to private refinance? Do we try to get a lower interest rate? You know, and the pros and cons of doing that. Well, rant for us. What?
Oh, well, I mean,
when should they do it?
So the cons to private refinancing is that once you do that, you lose all of your government benefits. And you enter a fixed repayment schedule that you are forced to repay regardless of any changes in your life, and you cannot bankrupt it, right? So if something goes wrong...
But you can't bankrupt anything now anyway.
For some reason, your income went away. Well, if you're on the income-based repayment, your payment just drops to 0 and then gets forgiven after 20 years.
Okay.
So you can't bankrupt it, but there's a lot of flexibility if for some reason you got disabled or, you know, lost your license or something to that effect. So there's just a lot of flexibility with the government repayment plans.
Why is the fly only flying around me and not Ryan?
I got some of it too.
Do I smell like shit? Is that what it is? But anyway.
There's just pros and cons, and people need. And the problem with the thing that concerns me about private refinancing is that there's a dozen banks that are marketing to these new grads like crazy, making them feel dumb for not refinancing. You'll save thousands and thousands of dollars in interest, and that's potentially true. But there are some consequences to private refinancing.
And let me just say one thing about advertising. The one thing I've advertised as much to dentists as anybody's had. I mean, hell, I've had a dental magazine go to all the dentists and orthodontists since '94. But the one thing when I was in MBA school, they always say people always advertise their biggest weakness. So like, an American cars suck. So what do they always advertise? Oh, we have a bumper-to-bumper warranty for 10 years. You'll never hear a Japanese or German car manufacturer saying that because their cars work. Raisin Bran. The only thing that you won't find in Raisin Bran is a raisin. So what do they say? 2 scoops of raisins in every box. Whatever they're telling you, what it is, here's the reason why. So their competitors, like if you're selling a Japanese car or a Lex car, you'll be saying, well, those American cars are full of shit. They're crappy. So what do the Americans say? We have bumper-to-bumper warranty, 5-year warranty. So they know, when you're going to a dental convention, and this booth knows what that booth is talking shit about his product. So what is he going to focus on? What's wrong with this product? What's wrong with this product? You go find out in the booth across the hill. So people tend to, so when you're getting bombarded with all these advertisements, if they're saying you're going to save thousands of dollars on interest, that's probably most likely not going to happen.
Yeah, and it's
or am I just too jaded at 55?
Well, I think they're not going to tell you the consequences of refinancing, that you're going to lose all of those government benefits. And there's a very small fine print on the bottom with an asterisk next to it. And for a certain amount of people, I don't know what that percentage is, but they're really going to regret having refinanced their loans. And every once in a while, I meet somebody who is making $120,000 a year that has refinanced all of their debt, and they're barely surviving.
The funniest one is with politicians. They don't want to say that they voted for this because you gave them $100,000, because that would be a bribe.
Right.
And the only way you get a law passed, the only way you get a bill passed is with the water bills. I give you a bunch of bills and you pass a bill. So it's all bribery and corruption. So what does the politician say? Oh, well, you know, I'm very happy to see that Ryan bought into my ideas and campaigned. They're saying you bought into my ideas, because what really happened? You bought my ideas. I didn't have an idea on this. Ryan showed up with a $100,000 campaign contribution, so it's bribery. So I can't say that, because that's go to jail shit, and that's how our entire country's ran. So I say, no, Ryan, he bought into my ideas. He bought into my agenda, because my opponent didn't say that, and you're like, okay. So right. Everything is jaded.
And so, again, one is not necessarily better than the other. It's just people need to understand the consequences of both. And when you're talking to the bank, they're really going to talk up how much interest you'll save. Going to save interest.
So can you mention by brand name, who are the big banks trying to redo all these?
SoFi is one of the bigger ones.
SoFi, can you tell me that right?
And actually,
SoFi?
Yeah, SoFi.
So what does that stand
for? Social finance.
Social finance, and where are they out of?
They might be out of California, actually. And they started, they're now like a bank with all kinds of other services. They started purely on refinancing private loans.
Now, is this a regulated bank, or is this peer-to-peer lending?
I think they might be a regulated bank now. They started peer-to-peer.
Yeah, and that's where when you're 55 and you've seen all these crashes, they always come from where you're not looking.
Right.
Like nobody was looking at the 2008. No one was looking at the subprime lending.
Yeah.
Right now in autos, you know, like in 2008 they sold 9,000 American autos here. Now it's up to like 17,000. But if you break down that 17,000, 5,000 of those cars were leased. Mm. And who has to lease a car? People who can't get financing.
Right.
What is that? Subprime. So now subprime in auto is called a lease. And right now, after that 2008 crash, they did all this regulatory reform. So what did they all do? They all said, well, we're leaving the banks. We're going peer-to-peer lending. What does that mean? It means that this isn't a bank regulated by the Federal Reserve. This is, we're going to go get people worth over $1 million. They're called high net worth investors. We're going to say, well, if you bought bonds, what are they, 2-3%? Give me your millions of dollars. I'll loan it to these subprime people.
Yeah.
And you loan it at 10%. We'll split it. So I'll be making.
And I think that's how
social
finance started.
Leasing an auto and peer-to-peer lending is probably one of the highest places the next disaster will come from. Because it's all flying below the radar.
Yeah, it may. And like I said, I think now SoFi they've actually become a bank. I think they do like retirement planning now. They have taken that student loan, and they were doing student loans on physicians and dentists in particular. Because they have high amounts of
They're
student
out of
debt.
Heldsburg, California.
Okay, it was California. There you go.
Where's Heldsburg at? Where the hell is Heldsburg?
I think that's Bay Area, maybe.
Is that Bay Area? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That'd be a high tech.
Yeah. As far as I know, I think they're great people. I mean, the government loans were sitting at like 8% in some cases, 8.25% for some of these Grad Plus loans. So they were coming along at 4 and 5% and refinancing people's debt. DRB is another one.
What's DRB?
Darien Rowan Bank. I think they actually give a 0.25% discount if you remember the ADA.
So why do you think? And how do you? Let's go, Jay. How do you think they got the ADA? That if you remember the ADA, do you think they gave the ADA any money?
I would hate to speculate, but
well, just go out on a limb. This is Dentistry Uncensored.
I'm going to say that there was probably a sponsorship. I would guess.
Bob Ibsen used to just rant until I thought he was going to have a stroke about whenever he tried to get the ADA seal of approval, how much they would try to shake him down for. And
by the way, I don't usually see them with the lowest rate. So if I get a dentist who's going to refinance, I usually recommend you go check out a couple of banks. DRB is usually not lower. You can still check them out if you want to, but and there's a bunch of them now. Even like credit unions and stuff will do it. Everybody wants to lend to dentists. Everybody wants to lend to dentists and doctors, physicians, I should say.
And you know why that is?
It's those low default rates, right?
It's very, very interesting. You know, so many people talk about, woulda, shoulda, coulda, or my philosophy or this or that, whereas business is what the hell works. And when you go to free dental clinics, what is their number one problem? 50% don't even show up for their appointment because they have no skin in the game.
Right.
So when you try to tell the Barry Sanders, what was Sanders' first name? The guy Bernie with free healthcare. You try to say, well, how about that they can't make an appointment? It costs them $10 to make an appointment. The same amount of money they go buy a pack of cigs with every single day.
Yes.
And weed is, how much is a bag of weed?
I don't know, but
he's quick. He's quick. He was just about to say $50 a bag, then he realized, I can't say that. But you say, well, Bernie, they buy a pack of cigarettes every day for $10, which causes all the hell. Why don't we have $10? Because if they paid $10 to make an appointment, guess what happened? They'd all show up.
Right.
So on the student loan default rate, what do you see? The people with the least amount of student loans have the highest default. And the people with the highest amount, doctors, dentists, physicians, lawyers, have the lowest default.
Right.
Because when you become a doctor of jurisprudence, law, medicine, MD, dentistry, you swallowed a hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
So the dentist, physician, lawyer, so the higher the amount, the better the repayment, because this monkey has skin in the game.
Yep.
Just like with your 5 boys, I'll tell you this, Ryan, cover your ears. If you buy them the bicycle, they'll leave it in the front yard and it'll get stolen. But if you take them to the store and say, which one do you want? And they'll say, that one right there, the one that costs the most. And say, okay, I'll go half on it with you. Now they don't want the which one, they want the one in the middle. And if they have to pay half, they'll take it to their bedroom with it, and then they'll when they get out of the shower, they'll take their towel and clean it.
So we just did that. We did it with our oldest. We did it with our oldest. We made him pay for half his bike because I got sick and tired of seeing him out in the rain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have so much skin in the game once you're over $100,000 in student loans.
That's
they're
right.
not going to default.
That's right. And they have professional licenses that.
Now I did not know that. That was news to me. I have learned more on Dentistry Uncensored. First of all, I'm the only person who listened to all 1,000 shows, and get it because I was on the show. And but I learned I had no idea that you could.
Yeah, there's all kinds of funny.
We'll talk about that again. So with the government loan program.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like not paying child support or not paying your taxes. The government has full recourse in a variety of areas to come get their money. And
that's why I was afraid to do that 23andMe, because I thought, well, if they have my DNA out there, I'm going to start getting child support checks from.
Right.
Bad joke. Okay. So
SoFi's, DRB's, DRB's another one. Lenke. I actually have I need to get this on my website, but credible.com. Credible is a broker of banks.
Credible with a C?
Yeah.
Just like it sounds, credible.com?
Yeah, they're a broker of banks, which I kind of like. You get a bunch of
I'm on the SoFi
place.
Twitter account. It looks like they do a lot of...
They do everything now, right? They started off with this private refinancing of student loans, and then they moved into all these other areas servicing... probably they work with everybody now, but I think at the time they were particularly going after the...
Let me ask you a very uncomfortable question, but very, very true. When you're $350,000 in debt, or your average client, and your lover is $350,000, is there any marriage advantage, any marriage penalty? Should that be something where we should stay single? I mean, I don't. Yeah, but it's a weird question. But
so it depends on how old their loans are. For anybody that's graduated in the last 4 or 5 years, you can file separately, and see that gets complicated depending on what state you're in. If you're in a community property state, it's a little bit different. But sometimes I do have clients that file separately to lower their payment because it is based on the adjusted gross income. So that is something that we will look at, analyze in conjunction with our CPA to make sure. Because usually, if you file separately, you end up paying a little bit more in tax.
Is SoFi the biggest one?
I think so.
DRB? Can you find DRB, Ryan? DRB and credible.com?
SoFi is probably one of the largest private refinancing lenders, if I had to guess. They were one of the first ones to start doing it.
Yeah, they don't really. They're making it hard to see if this is peer-to-peer lending or if it's a bank.
And there's new banks popping up. I mean, it's hard for me to keep track of them. Anybody that's listened to this, it's a lot of times. Actually, on Dentaltown, there's a lot of guys that are posting their rates that they've seen recently.
How come you don't post back? You haven't posted yet.
I have 5 boys, I think, and all the nonprofit boards.
But you must not need new clients.
No, I need to get on there and post. I need to
because what's neat about Dentaltown is there's no spam because you're answering the question.
Right.
If you answer the question, well, if you'd like to know the answer to this, contact me at Ryan at studentloananalysis.com. That's spam, and it'll get deleted by our moderators. By the way, some of you guys think their moderators are too hard on people. The moderators are all volunteers. And when you're abusive and say rude things or spam, go to Facebook.
Yeah.
We don't need you on Dentaltown. We get 1,000 new dentists a month. We got 250,000 dentists from every country on earth. And some of you think you can just come there and be a troll and make people feel bad and spam and all that stuff. And I know I get all kinds of emails. I can't believe you banned so-and-so. I've never banned anyone. Volunteers do. There's a report abuse button. If you think this is spam, the moderators will look at it. We have our own message board where they talk about it. I don't participate in that because I don't have time. And volunteers decide if that post should be deleted. Or we play baseball. You like baseball. It's strike 1, 2, or 3. So the first time I say, Ryan, that's spam. We deleted your post.
Yeah.
Don't say, to answer the question, email me, Ryan at studentloananalysis.com. Answer the damn question. But in your signature, it says, I'm Ryan.
Contact me.
I'm Norfolk, Yosemite, the student loan. What do you call yourself? The student loan?
Studentloananalysis.com.
But no, your name was Student Loan Shark, Student Loan Guru.
Oh.
Student Loan Guru. That's all, SLG. I loved it. Student Loan Guru. That's totally unique.
Yeah.
You're the only student loan guru. That's why I asked you to be on the show.
All right.
Is there anything that you were trying to say, but I interrupted you too many times? Is there any question I should ask but wasn't smart enough to ask?
So the question I get asked a lot is the government going to take these plans away? These income-based repayment plans, the government going to take them away? No one knows the answer to that. We know how crazy our government is. They can do anything that they want. All of the proposals have preserved existing borrowers. It does look like there will probably be some changes in the near future for new students enrolling in 2019. But that remains to be seen. It's guesses at this point.
Well, you can't be $750 billion. American people can't be $750 billion in debt with their credit card unless someone gave them credit.
Right.
The one thing we know with young kids in school is like, if you gave your oldest is what, 12?
10.
10. Well, 10 is too young, but when he turns 16, if you gave him a credit card with a $100,000 line of credit, he would go buy a Ferrari that night.
Right.
And then when he defaulted on the Ferrari, you'd have to say to yourself, well, why did he buy a Ferrari? Because someone gave him. So I go to those dental schools, and I know they get mad at me when I say this, but it looks like a new car lot for Honda. I didn't have a car in undergrad. I didn't have a car the first 3 years of dental school. 5 of us boys lived in a $500 a month apartment and walked 8 blocks to school. They're flying in jet airplanes for spring break. They're taking cruises. They're getting married, having stay-home wives and have kids. Why? Because someone's loaning them all this money. So the best way to decide if something's wrong, like take real estate bubbles. When people always say, so many things people say, I mean, just everyone says that aren't even close right. They'll say, well, what goes up must come down. Really? Explain Neil Armstrong standing on the moon to me. They'll say, well, you don't want to rent a house for 30 years. That's stupid. You want to buy a house. Well, actually, you can rent any house over the 30-year period for 85% of the mortgage payment. So if you rented a house for 30 years and you took that 15% different and put it in a Spider, a 501, an S&P 500 index fund, guess who has more money at the end of 30 years? The idiot who bought a house? So when you look at the rental rate of the mortgage and the mortgage payment starts to go higher than the rental rate, like if you could rent this house for $1,000 or $850, but the mortgage payment, the average mortgage payment in the house should be about $1,000. But when the mortgage payment starts getting to $2,000, but you can only rent it out for $850, we're in bubble territory. And so everything gets faster, easier, higher quality, cheaper. And whenever your prices are going up, but your price is going up, but not your faster, easier, higher quality. When there's a separation between those lines, someone's going to come and knock it out. And the cost of college universities over the last 20 years is completely insane. And a lot of it's because these kids are all getting subsidized by these loans. But if you're the guy that goes in there and says, I'm going to get rid of all the student loans, now you're a monster. But if you got rid of all the student loans, guess what would happen to all the faculty getting paid $100,000 a year that teaches 3 classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then says he's doing homework and research and all this bullshit? If you gutted the student loans, what would happen to the price of tuition at the average university in America? What would happen to it?
Would it have to drop, right?
By what percent? It'd be cut in half tomorrow. So, and the guy who cuts it in half will be the
supply and
asshole,
demand,
the bad guy. He'll be a monster. So what does government do? They just kick the can down.
I'll give you another great example of this. I had a vet student want me to come speak at their vet school, and I'll leave it nameless. But one of the professors called me to just kind of see if I knew what I was talking about. And so we start chatting, and eventually we get to the point where he goes, here's what he said, and I quote this: if the government ever gets rid of income-based repayment, veterinary medicine is dead, is what he said. And vets have it probably the worst because they come out with it depends on the school, but $350, $300. I've seen some with $400, $500.
And they don't make that much money.
They make like $75,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's where there's a disconnect there. Like, you can't expect a taxpayer to subsidize. I mean, maybe you can. But they're not doing it voluntarily, right? Right now, it's not a conscious decision to make that subsidy. It's just happening by default because
that's
of the way
another
these
emotional. So we talk about money being emotional. I mean, for 30 years, I practiced across the street from the Awatugi Veterinary Center. I'm 4,000 square feet there. You know how many people say to me, well, I don't have any money. I just paid $5,000 for chemo on my cat. It's like, in Asia, a cat is dinner. You just spent $5,000 on your dinner? I mean, when you tell someone you can't spend $5,000 on chemo for a cat, and then what's really weird is you'll just go to Wikipedia. How long does this exact breed of dog usually last? Usually they live between 12 and 14 years. How old is your dog? 16 years. What are you doing? He's going through chemotherapy. It's like, and then if you told that person, you should just shoot that dog. Now you're like an evil bad guy. You're a Nazi. You're just.
Howard and I are not advocating for the harming of any animals in this podcast, just to be clear.
Well, actually, just to be clear, let me tell you how my childhood went down. I was 10 years old. My dad was out of town. My dog Nippy was my best friend, and he doubled his weight in about a week. I kept telling my mom, we got to take him to the doctor. We got to take him to the doctor. When your father gets home, you ask your father. Dad gets home, I'm crying. We got to take Nippy to the vet. He's like, all right, damn it. So he puts the dog in there. Me and Nippy go take Nippy to the vet. Vet looks at Nippy. He takes him to the back room, comes back out, looks at my dad and says, Nippy is very, very sick, and he's going to need an operation. And I think back then, I don't know, I think it was going to be like $1,000. I'll never forget my dad. My dad went to Mass every single morning. All of us went to Mass every single morning. My two older sisters left high school, went straight into the Catholic nunnery. My dad leaned over, he gave Nippy a big kiss, said, Nippy, you're going to see Jesus. I'm like, no. And Nippy was reunited with Jesus in a very short amount of time. But the bottom line is, these there's nothing to laugh at. I cried for a week. But the bottom line is, what we start is when it comes to money, when it comes to pets, it's very emotional.
It is. And I think, like, you know, and I'm not saying vet schools should charge less. I don't know how all that works. Well,
how do you graduate a kid $350,000 in debt if he's only going to make $75 a year? It's because somebody's loaning money to a kid. And why is that kid? Because when we were little, they had Marcus Welby. You're too young to, did you ever hear?
No, Marcus Welby.
So they had all these, or ER.
Okay.
And they had a dog or a cat, so they fall in love with, when I grow up, I want to fix dogs and cats because I love my dog or cat. Okay, that's emotional.
Yeah.
But you're going to go $350,000 to work on a cat and make $75 a year? That doesn't make sense. That's one of the reasons dental school flies under the radar, because whenever dentistry is in the media, it's a joke. He's a monster. It's look at every... Even Jennifer Aniston, when she was the dentist, what was the name of that movie? Bad Boss. I mean, the dentist is always a serial killer. It doesn't attract anyone. But there's all these police shows, fireman shows, doctor shows. And it's always the doctor saves his life, then goes on a hot date with the nurse, So they're all emotionally invested.
Right.
And you got to look at this as an engineering accounting decision.
And if, veterinary medicine needs to be subsidized, I think, I don't know, but it seems like the student loan was not the intent of the program, was to allow these institutions to just raise tuition unchecked. Because there's an unlimited supply of money, right? Unlimited supply.
The only way you could fix the universities is to gut the student loan. You just have to stop it, and their prices would come down in half. And you're at $19 trillion in debt, and our government can't even stop the COLAs. 85% of it is entitlements. And the COLAs, cost of living adjustments, they're still giving grandma a cost of living adjustment raise on all of her benefits every year, when the average American only had enough Social Security withdrawal to pay for them for 3.5 years, and they're living over a dozen.
Right.
And Congress can't even take away the raises. So what I bet will happen in Congress is, though they won't make any hard decisions, they'll just keep kicking the can until the bond market, finally, the $19 trillion bond market, when that crashes.
Well, and see, it's not backed by the bond market. It's on the government's balance sheet.
But the government can only run a $1.5 trillion deficit by
their
saying,
deficit.
We're going to pay our bills. We're going to print this piece of paper, and it's called a U.S. bond.
Right.
And just keep buying it.
Yep.
And when everybody says this bond is worth the paper it's printed on, then the government says, we can't run a deficit. So now we're going to have to raise taxes and
we're going to have to cut spending.
So until they have to raise taxes and cut spending, they're not going to do it.
And the scary thing about the student loans is that a lot of the cost is going to be when the debt's getting forgiven, which isn't going to be, it's going to be really bad in 10 or 15, not for maybe another 10 years.
So do you really love your 5 boys?
I do.
So you should move to Sydney, Australia. You should move to a country that is fiscally in order.
Yeah, the thought has crossed my mind.
You live in one of the most batshit crazy countries
Oh my gosh.
in the world.
Did you see the quality of life thing that came out? Quality of life in California is the worst in the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, USA Today came out with that.
Huh. Yeah. But anyway, seriously, I can't believe that you got flew out here to Arizona. It's Sunday to be on my show to talk to the homies. How do they contact you again?
Email Ryan at studentloananalysis.com. You go to my website. You can actually book a meeting with me right on my website, studentloananalysis.com.
And give him some business, because he's got 5 young baby boys he needs to feed. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.